Hi, welcome. This is Justice for All's Connection with Coffee. My name is Joel DeWit, Executive Director at Justice for All. This is episode 10. We made it to double digits. Wasn't sure what we had in store for the future, but we made it there. We're here, number 10. Guest today as, what would you, do you have a title? I mean, Aaron Baart is the name, but do you have a title?
Here in Dordt in my work?
Sure, yeah.
I serve as Chief of Staff and Dean of Chapel.
Okay, all right. And are there other titles other places, or is it just at work you get a title? Yeah.
No, I don't have no title. In fact, even at home, all my kids call me by my first name.
No.
They do.
Not Dad?
No, it happened one time when my son watched the Simpsons episode years ago and saw that Bart called his dad Homer. Thought it was hilarious, and then taught all of his other siblings the same, and it's kind of become this affectionate thing. They call my wife Mom. They all call me Aaron. So no, this is the only place I get to enjoy a title joke.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's great to have you on. And I guess we'll call you Aaron then, since that's what your kids affectionately call you. Huh. That's an interesting deal. So, typically we just kind of go over a little bit of background. We know each other. For anyone who doesn't know, Aaron married me and my wife April just over 18 years ago. We celebrated our 18th wedding anniversary last week Monday. So
Congratulations.
Thank you. You were there.
It was a very hot day.
It was warm.
I remember that.
Lake Pahoja.
Yep.
I don't know that anyone else has ever gotten married there. I think we were the only wedding to ever have been married there.
The only one I know of.
The only one that's important.
Yes.
Maybe. Yes. I don't know. We've known each other for a while, but I guess give folks an idea where you grew up, maybe what the background is, how you got into ministry, and kind of where you feel God has kind of called you into as your current role. A lot of years, but just,
Yeah. Okay. That's
you don't need to go
a lifetime.
I know. Just put your whole life out there real quick.
Yeah.
In the next 30 seconds. No, I'm kidding. You can take as much time as you want.
Well, it all began on a warm spring day in May of 1976. No, I was born and raised in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. I ended up coming down here to finish my undergrad at what was Dordt College at the time. Met my wife here, moved back to Vancouver, went through seminary at Regent College, became a church planter, first in Vancouver and then here in Iowa for 6 years. That's where I met you in April.
Yep.
And then 14 years ago, transitioned to work at Dordt as Dean of Chapel, and I've been here ever since.
How did you get called to becoming, how did you figure out that seminary was the route for you? Or how did God place that on your heart? If you don't mind me asking that.
No, it's fine.
A real question.
Ever since I was a little kid, I just felt a call to ministry. I knew that's what I was supposed to do. But I spent many years of my life fighting it. I even actively remember as a teenager thinking, if I just mess up bad enough, then maybe God will leave me alone and I won't have to do this.
No.
And then apparently that's not how it works. It kind of feels like the story of Jonah.
Okay.
Trying to run the opposite direction. In fact, it was really messed up in the drug scene when I was a kid. I made some really poor choices before God rattled my cage and got me falling a little more in line with what He wanted for my life.
I can relate to making poor choices. I can relate to that. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad that you listened and didn't continue to ignore or run the other way. So that's pretty neat. So after seminary, church plant. How did that call happen? Because that was the church we went to, was Bridge of Hope, and that's where you were at.
Yeah, I guess for me, it was finding out along the way. I really didn't want to go into ministry because I saw people, I saw adults, grown-ups in the church, and they all honestly, when I was a kid, looked kind of like miserable as Christians, like they weren't enjoying themselves. That Christianity was like bad tasting medicine. Like it was something you were supposed to swallow and do, but nobody actually enjoyed. At least that's what it looked like to a kid.
Sure.
And so it looked like the world was having a lot more fun. And I guess once I really surrendered my life to Christ, it was more a matter of finding acceptance and allowance from others that I didn't have to do this the way anybody else did.
Yeah.
I didn't have to become whatever a pastor looked like in my mind. I just had to follow Christ as I am. And that realization was really freeing to me.
Yes, I would imagine.
And so I wanted to be in a church setting that wasn't like other church settings that I had known. Wanted to kind of recreate. Had a real heart for people who had stories like mine that didn't feel like they belonged in church. And so the thought of creating a hospital for sinner rather than a museum for saints sounded really appealing. And church planting kind of fit that bill.
Yeah, it would. It's hard. Yeah, I can see, especially like, I don't know, in this area where we're at, and I don't know, when I think about you're saying not having fun, I was sort of like, well, how my parents were. They're like, we were going to do this. This is what we have to do. Like, we have to go to church twice on Sunday. Like, I grew up in Southern California. We went to church twice on Sunday, like all the time.
Yeah.
Like, that was just, this is what you did. Like, just what you did. I don't know. I think it's from their parents did that a little.
Yeah. I definitely felt like that as a kid. This is something you had to do. And I needed to leave it in order to find out that this is something you get to do.
Yeah. There's beauty in the knowing that there's like, it feels like a burden, right? But I suppose as I watch my kids grow up, and maybe you watch this with yours as you're so a little older than mine, but like watching my daughter like have questions about her faith and have some of that, like I'd love to just say, no, these are what the answers are, right? I'd love to just, that's what it is. Those are the answers. But that's not how it's going to work.
No, I mean, you hit a certain age, and because I said so, as a parent, isn't a valid answer anymore. And rightfully so, right? They should be asking their own questions. And you have to be able to go through a journey of figuring out that you need a Savior, you want a Lord, and that you appreciate the genius of Jesus.
Yeah. So, when did you ever hear about Justice for All? I don't know that I've ever asked you that. And what did you know about it? Anything?
I got to know Justice for All from one of its past directors through Dan DeGroat.
Okay, yeah.
And I think just being in pastoral ministry in the area, you find all the local resources around you. You find the places you want to partner with. You find the people who are doing amazing things. And you try to connect people within your church through service opportunities and places like that. And so JFA quickly emerged as one of those places for me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's what Justice for All does. It provides opportunities for folks and builds relationships, and that's awesome. One of the things that I think would be interesting to know, because I know it, is the small connection that Justice for All has to One Body, One Hope, and just there's only small ways that we've kind of worked together a little bit in that part of it. But if you would share about that part of your life or your story.
Sure. In 2007, my wife and I co-founded a nonprofit that works exclusively in Liberia, West Africa, through a relationship that we had made with a pastor from there. Oddly enough, while in Ethiopia, adopting our second son, ran into a pastor from Liberia.
Okay.
Became close friends. And then once certain needs arose in his life, just through our communications back and forth, invited us to come. And so one thing had led to another, and what was just a friendship has become a church planting and community development organization in West Africa. It's now planted 50 churches, 15 Christian schools, 3 children's homes, microfinance programs, and people from all over Northwest Iowa have gotten involved. So you meet people who have a heart for these sorts of things. And of course, in our area, a lot of those are people who have overlap with ministries like JFA because they've got a heart for a lot of the same things.
For sure. Yep. Oh, there's definitely an overlap for that a little bit. I think it's funny. I was just thinking you wanted to become a church planter, and yeah, you kind of are.
It's kind of ironic, right? I went to one of the best seminaries in the world to become a church planter, and then found somebody with no education who was actually better at it, a lot better at it than I was. And so now it's kind of throwing energy and resources and opportunity behind him and behind their efforts. So yeah, a little more indirectly and behind the scenes involved in church planting.
That's kind of where I was going with that. Like, it's not, the focus isn't you being the church planter, it's the support and being the conduit, I guess, a little bit into what the church planting situation is in West Africa.
Yeah, so Pastor Emmanuel Bimba, our lead partner there, he's the one that's done all of this, and thousands of people have come to Christ through his ministry, and planted churches and communities that have never ever had a Christian witness in all of history.
Wow.
And so there's been many trips in support of them through educational efforts, through pastor training, through microfinance teaching, through agricultural support. And many of those trips, of course, have led to us bringing things for kids in our children's homes, and have often been huge beneficiaries of the work of JFA through that. The amount of suitcases through JFA that we've taken to help people in one of the poorest countries in the world, it's just been an absolute gift.
There are a lot of things that come through the warehouse. It's almost overwhelming from time to time, the volume of possessions. Materially, very rich in this area. Very rich.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of our responsibility as believers, right? To whom much is given, much is expected.
Yeah.
We have been given a great deal. And so to combine and match the resources of somewhere as wealthy as Northwest Iowa is with some of the places that have not had the same opportunities in the world, I think is just a beautiful response to the gospel.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not just in Africa where things are like that. There are the places that we partner with, or that Justice for All tries to partner with, are in the U.S. some of the poorest in the nation, and whether that's in Kentucky or West Jackson or wherever that might be, there's been some long-standing relationships that we can walk alongside people who are going through just tough stuff.
No, it's great. And I just love the opportunity to connect, not just sort of through giving, but through giving in relationships, because I know a lot of people have been able to go along with JFA and some of its partnerships to meet people within these communities, to see those points of interpersonal connection, to develop friendships that have become transformative for them in huge ways.
Yeah, well, that's pretty neat, really. So what are things that are happening in the current, where you're at right now, whether that's with One Body, One Hope, if you want to bring that to a little bit more current, since that's kind of the topic we're on?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're kind of in the at a place where we're rebuilding our national training center for all of our teachers and pastors, social workers, nurses. That's the big construction project that's underway right now.
So in Liberia, on a campus or on a camp, I've seen pictures, but I have not been. But like, there's a place that you're building that people will go to become trained and then disperse from there. Is that?
Yeah, it started as a pile of rubble at the end of the Civil War. It ended up becoming a home for Civil War orphans, which became a church, which became a regional school, and then now is a national training center. So it's just continued to develop through the visions and dreams that they've had for being able to be a place of sending throughout the country. And it's in the capital, but their heart is really for the unreached people groups who all live inland. And so that's where we do the majority of our crusades, the majority of our church planting.
How many people live in Liberia, or roughly?
Well, the same as the state of Iowa.
Okay.
About 4 million.
All right. Is it about the same size? Or what's the square footage? Not square miles, not footage. It's bigger than that.
The country itself is 1/3 the size of Iowa. Okay.
I'm just trying to put my own mental capacity around, like, taking Iowa and chopping it into thirds, and where the same number of people, but only 1/3 of the land, which is probably tough to get to, I would imagine.
It's mostly all jungle, right? It's tropical rainforest.
Yeah, you're right near the equator.
Most of the places where we farm and work average between 120 and 140 inches of rain annually. So
that's a lot.
That's a lot of rain, which leads to, especially in the rainy season, a lot of disease, malaria.
Yeah, mosquitoes would breed heavily in wet conditions like that, I would think.
Yeah, malaria is still, I think, the biggest killer in Africa, and so that's a huge problem for us there.
Mm-hmm. So you're building a resource center to send out people. How did they get connected to your pastor, to your leader? What was his name? Emmanuel?
Yeah, his name is Emmanuel Bimba. They're connected to him a number of different ways, primarily through a radio ministry that he does that's broadcast all over West Africa.
Oh.
He had the brilliant idea when Ebola hit and everybody was stuck inside of their homes and couldn't move and was really terrified.
Yeah.
To increase the ability to be able to speak hope into a very despairing situation for them. That was the global epicenter of Ebola. 10,000 people there died during that outbreak. And so there's fear all over. Everybody was isolated from each other within their homes. And so the idea of what's one way we can reach them was, let's get on the radio. And since then has turned into one of the bigger radio broadcasting shows that people listen to nationally and actually beyond Liberia's borders as well. And so you can go into a different community and people know and trust the name of his ministry because he's already has an established presence through an authoritative preaching voice on the radio.
There's a name recognition a little bit, and that goes along with it. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's most well known for speaking out very publicly against a lot of the health and wealth gospel that has often been brought from America, unfortunately, into a lot of Africa. He preaches pretty boldly against that, helping people understand God's place and presence in the middle of despair and brokenness and poverty and hurt. And places where God dwells.
It's probably easy to say, well, if you do these things, then this is the good stuff that's going to happen. Because that's how it happens out here in the U.S. We do these things and the good things happen. Ish.
Well, yeah, because we live under the illusion of control, right?
Oh, yeah.
We think that if we do this in our life, it'll generate this result, and that the overarching mental model that most of us are working out of is that life moves up and to the right. Rather than one step forward, two steps back, three steps forward, one step back. Spiritual growth is not a direct journey. There's a lot of stumbles and pitfalls along the way, and so it's just a much more realistic picture of what he preaches. And I think people can become really disillusioned when hard things happen, when you really believe that God was supposed to make your life better. Then there's a lot of, I think, even American Christianity, right? So a deep-seated belief that if I just follow Jesus the right way and do the right things, that my life will get better, my life will get easier.
That's what a person would want, but maybe not what they're called to do. I can see where that would be an easy pitfall to think about. Well, I don't have to rely on God to provide for me because I can just do it myself, whether that's a conscious statement or just a subconscious way that you live your life.
Yeah, I was reading some research recently that was talking about the two greatest contributors to the decline of Christianity in the Western world, and in America in particular. It referenced the fact that Christianity was shrinking in America right now, and will be over the next 20 to 30 years, faster than in any other country in the world.
Okay.
And it attributed that exactly to our affluence and the ease and comfort we have under the protections that we have politically. And that Christianity is actually growing the fastest globally in places of persecution, places like Iran and China, Tibet, Nepal, places like that, or Singapore were all sort of in the top 5 places where Christianity was growing the fastest, at least as a percentage of the population.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard to believe. Yeah, it's hard to think about what persecution would look like in this area, because I've thought about that before when it's like, it's really hard for me to be a Christian out here. Not really. Because I sort of take it for granted. I don't have to worry about, is someone going to put a gun to my head or tell me that I can't get together and worship, or that I can't read the Bible, or that I can't, nobody's telling me I can't do those things. If someone told me that, would I then still want to do them? Golly, I hope so. But unless I'm in that position, it's hard for me to say what exactly I would do.
I'm working on a video project right now at Dordt, and we interviewed a pastor in India who told us the story of a time when their church and all of the believers within their church were attacked and chased through their village. One of the men was caught and burned alive in front of all of them.
Wow.
And through tears, the pastor went on to tell the story that as horrible and as horrific as that was, it was actually the catalytic moment that caused the greatest growth in their church. Because everybody else came to realize that if this is something worth dying for, it must be something worth living for. And that it was the death of one of their church members that became the single greatest catalytic moment for growth. And that by the time it was done in his testimony, he thanked the Lord for the persecution and suggested that every Christian in every Christian community should undergo something difficult that puts pressure on them, because it strengthens faith.
Yeah.
And it shows that this is something that really transcends even this life, and therefore is worth living and even worth dying for. Amazing.
That is amazing. Yes, incredible. Wow. That's pretty. Yeah, I don't even have the words. It's heavy, but it's also powerful, but it's also amazing. Yeah. What are things that are going on here at Dordt University? Since we're at Dordt University, besides that video project, which sounds pretty incredible, that are happening that you can, I don't know, share with people who are listening.
Yeah. Well, I'll share really quickly about that video project. Mark Volkers and I have been working on this for the past 5 years. We filmed it in 8 countries on 4 continents.
Wow.
And basically looks at how we're really entering a new paradigm in missions. Because there's a Christian established presence in every country in the world now, new questions need to be asked about, is it worthwhile sending someone from the West to the rest? Mm-hmm. Sort of this model that at times can be culturally imperialistic or even condescending.
Yeah.
Like we've got things figured out.
Sure.
Which ironically, right, our Christianity is shrinking, and there are many places where we're sending missionaries. It's growing at incredible rates, right? Like my example, Pastor Emmanuel, who's been so much more effective at growing the body of Christ than I have been. And yeah, finding and telling those stories, and then asking the question, is it a different time in the kingdom of God and then the epochs of missions? Where now we're seeing people coming to the U.S. and refugee and immigrant communities who are actually becoming kind of the new stalwarts and the new places of the most Christian growth in America.
Is that right?
And in fact, in many Western countries. So we filmed them at Westminster Abbey, where David Livingstone was buried.
Yeah.
Was the father of missions to Africa. But just a couple blocks down the road was the fastest growing church in England, led by a Nigerian pastor. And so just the thought that David Livingstone once went somewhere to evangelize a different part of the world.
And people came back.
And now they're actually coming back re-evangelizing a Western Europe that in many ways has left its Christian roots. Mm-hmm. And so sort of just this beautiful picture of the way God uses opportunities and different people in different ways. And kind of a wake-up moment for us to realize that the center of the global church really is in the South. It's not in the West anymore. That is where the greatest growth is coming and the greatest sending and missional presence. We're seeing that here too, where the most alive and the most growing Christian churches in America are made up of immigrant and refugee populations. So we talk all the time about immigration issues and what we're solved, and those are important conversations. But one thing I think we're not talking about in that is maybe the future of Christian faith in America is actually coming through some of the people actually crossing our borders right now.
There's certainly something to be, I guess, in my mind, you don't know what you have until it's something that you get pressured about whatever that is, right? So I think like people who are coming into our country, wherever they're coming from, there's a struggle that they must have had to go through to want to come here, where there are less political things that are going on that are going to be difficult. But they have the perspective of, I wasn't able to do this freely in my country, and I'm able to do it here. And I think that is certainly something that we can take from and learn from and grow from.
Yeah, absolutely. And seems like after a couple generations, it's pretty easy to start taking for granted things that you believe you're entitled to rather than things that are given as a gift of grace.
Other, besides a video project, which sounds great, if that ever gets done at some point, 5 years is a long time to work on something like that. Is there an end?
Well, it was not supposed to be a 5-year project, but there was this little interruption called COVID.
Oh, yeah. I heard about that.
Which made traveling all over the world really difficult for a while. But we will be all done this summer. It'll be coming out later this summer. The project is called Missions Upside Down, and it's a set of 6 12 to 15-minute videos. And there will be resources given away for free online to churches all across America.
Sweet.
So I'm really excited about Missions Upside Down. Other things going on. Outside my office, there's a bunch of construction here on campus. We've got new townhomes being built. We've got a brand new dining commons, recital hall, some additional classrooms and offices just to deal with the numerical growth happening on campus.
How many students are there currently? Roughly.
If you include our graduate programs, just over 1,900.
Wow. Has it ever been over 2,000 people, including that?
No. These are, every year has sort of been a new record the last number of years.
Sure.
Enrollment continues to grow. Our undergrad population is more like 1,550-ish.
Okay. That's still up there from, I feel like it wasn't that high when I went to school here. Yeah, it wasn't that high then.
No, when you were here, it would have been more like 1,200.
Yeah, I think that's pretty close to where I was when I remember. 1,200. Yeah, that's pretty close to what I remember it to be. Now, I do know from when I was here, I think in my time at this fine institution, I maybe went to chapel like one or two times. It wasn't a lot. If you could, I know where you're going to probably go with this, but if you could just give the idea of what the timber is currently on campus when you look at upside down missions and some of those type of focus things. How does it look different from when I was here in the early 2000s?
Yeah, I got to start in this job in 2010, and I guess I just really see it as a gift. I get to come at a time where I think God just had something in particular in mind in terms of some rebirth and renewal that He wanted to create spiritually on campus, and yeah, we've just seen that students are even very purposely choosing to come here because of the spiritual vitality, because of what's happening on campus. And I think our job has just simply been to put our ear to the ground and find a place where the Spirit's moving and try to remove as many obstacles as possible to get students in contact and in a relationship with others and with leaders around campus around those exact opportunities to simply connect with the Lord, to deepen their faith, to grow in that ability to own it really for the first time.
Yeah.
I think there's something deeply profound and spiritual when someone has to wake up on a Sunday morning for the first time without their mom waking them up to go to church and decide whether or not they want to go because this is their thing and not just their parents' thing.
Yeah, that is certainly something. That's certainly something that I went through coming to school here. Just wanting to wake up and be like, okay, I'm going to do this because it took a few years after I started here before it happened. But like, I want to go because I was created by God to worship Him, and this is a part of what I get to be able to do. Like it took a little while for me to even realize that. I can imagine, that would be.
It took a while for me to realize that too. I would refer to myself as a spiritual late bloomer. I remember many times sitting in the back thinking thoughts, but not actively participating and actually being envious of those who were able to live out their faith much more boldly. But for me, that didn't even come until after college, really.
Yeah. Well, you do it pretty well. I'll say that. I think it's something that's pretty neat. I do come to chapel here when I can, and not just listening to you preach and stuff like that, because that's very that's pretty incredible. So you have a gift, so don't let go of that gift, I guess is ultimately what I'm saying. But the other thing is that I have noticed that chapel has been more full than when I went to school here. And not that you have to measure it that way, but I think people being invested in their walk, that's going to be a way to see it.
Yeah, I work, our vice president for student success, Robert Taylor, says that, like, our students vote with their feet. They have a choice where they get to go. We don't require any of the spiritual formation activities on campus, including chapel, which is actually, I didn't know until later, actually kind of unique amongst Christian colleges. And we can tell, I think, whether or not things are happening in a positive way, whether students have a distinct spiritual hunger based on whether or not they're there.
Yeah.
And so if they're coming in large numbers, I think that's a great indicator of spiritual hunger that's transpiring within this generation, and gets me really excited for all the things that they're going to do.
Yeah. I think it's incredible when I go and listen to, you or someone else speaking. Just the fact that it's full, I think it gives me more ability to want to continue to do my job and to reach out into communities and be like, hey, these people who are in their early 20s, like, they're excited. They don't have the other responsibilities, but like, it makes me excited to want to be able to share with somebody where I get my joy from and what it is that I do in my life and how God placed the call to be where I'm at, and how all of those sort of things kind of work together as I look back on my life and move into that. I'm like, man, it's awesome that they're doing that sooner than I did it, which is neat, and it's going to be great to see where that might go.
Absolutely, it is really exciting. It's exciting too to see where that has come from. The student body makeup here is a lot different than it was 15, 20 years ago.
Okay.
Back or at least when I was here, like 80+% of our students came from one denomination, the Christian Reformed Church. Now less than 30% of our student population does.
Interesting.
And so there's been a great diversification across denominations. We've worked really hard to maintain what we would refer to as our Reformed identity.
Yeah.
And yet, apparently that's been really appealing to a much broader swath of people, and whether that's students from 30 different countries and unique gifts that they bring in the flavors, but also different denominations. And so I think that's really driven spiritual growth in a lot of ways, because we're a more accurate cross-section of the bigger body of Christ.
Sure.
And then each of the denominations that have their unique strengths, whether it's a focus on missions, a deep love of prayer, are bringing those passions with them.
Sure.
And they're all sort of working together synergistically to grow one another's faith at the same time. And so there's been the diversity has definitely led to the spiritual growth.
That is pretty neat, honestly, because it does get the reputation of it being from just one place, and hey, it's a reformed place, and this is the only way to do things. Well, that's not. That is not how it actually works.
No, it's not. I mean, our president refers to this all the time as being hospitably reformed, like knowing who you are and welcoming anybody else into that. But also, I mean, to be truly hospitable and invite somebody into your home or into your space is also to allow them to change you, right? And who you are through what God has done in their story.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been a real gift.
And to give someone the space to be able to share that and to feel comfortable in sharing that. I would imagine it would be difficult for someone to just come in out of wherever, Thailand or some other place, and be like, oh, hey, I'm just going to tell you how I grew up real quick a minute. Like, you'd have to be comfortably able to do that.
Yeah, I think it takes a certain level of humility which our students demonstrate on the regular. But I remember the experience, right? When you first go somewhere new, what you experience isn't different, it's wrong. That's what it feels like, right? Like when I first got married and the way my wife's family did Christmas wasn't different. I mean, it was wrong. And that's how it feels like. So to move the posture of your heart, of your mind to somebody else who's coming here and they're bringing these different things, it's actually going to enrich my life and going to make it bigger. I think there's something incredibly powerful about getting to worship, in a room with a bunch of fellow believers made up of over 100 different denominations every week.
Yeah.
And more in like 30 countries. And so I think that is a significant contributor and something that I wish our churches had opportunities to experience more of.
Yeah. Yeah, I am with you on that. I think it's amazing. I always wondered that when I was younger and we moved out to Iowa, and it was like, how come we have all the same denominations, have like 5 different churches? Like, why is that a thing? Why is that a thing? Like, let's just make sure we believe the same, hey, God created things and have the same center of it, but it's going to look different. And I always looked a little different anyway, but like, I wanted to see something a little bit different in that. And there wasn't a ton of that.
No, there isn't a ton. I've often wondered. I got a friend back home in Canada who's been in the retail business in shoes, and in every mall where they put a store in, they actually open 3 stores by 3 different names, and one does not have a shoe under $100. One has all shoes $50 to $100, and one has no shoe over $50.
Yeah. And
I said, "Why do you do that?" And he said, "Well, we just want to get everybody. Everybody has to buy a pair of shoes. We want all of them."
Yeah.
Which is a great philosophy. And I think churches, even denominations, right, in a place like Sioux Center, could be more purposeful like that. Just saying, you guys are really good at that. Lean into that and do it. We're really good at this. We're going to lean into it and do this. And our goal collectively is not to build our little fiefdom. Our goal is to grow the kingdom of God.
Yeah, the perspective of having a kingdom view versus a world-centered view almost.
Yeah, and I think it's human tendency. We're prone, right? Anybody at a college to think like that too. But it's a good reminder for any of us in any Christian ministry like JFA.
Yeah.
We are not called to build an empire. We're called to serve a kingdom, and that's much, much bigger. And so there's got to be complementary work between a One Body, One Hope and a JFA, and a Dordt University and a JFA.
That is one of the things that I have constantly been intentional about trying to, share with people, is to say, hey, listen, we do this part. We have the physical resource and we do service leadership. We do this part really well, but we don't do some other things well. So let's let in locally places like Atlas or Love in the Name of Christ or Family Crisis Center, people that, or a church or a university or whoever it is that does the things well, they need to do those things well, and we can support that. I don't know. That's my view. That's how I've viewed it. And I think that's just something that I hope comes through in a little bit more often. I think that's how Connection with Coffee kind of started. Just the ability to let people who do things well have their platform and have the ability to share that and how God is moving in their life and their ministry and so on.
Kudos to you for that, Joel. I've heard you articulate this since the day you started working there. I know that this is a passion area for you, and I love that. Yeah. Please don't give that up. Please don't let that go.
I'll do my best not to. It's not about me. I remind myself that on a regular basis. It's not about the things that I can do, but it's the things about that God is doing through me for others and how I can work with others. That's like every day. Just figuring that out. Well, I think that brings us to the end, honestly. This is a good spot. I appreciate the honesty, the perspective, the insight. I don't know, man. I just love the way that you put things.
Thanks, Joel. Your friendship has meant a lot to me over the years. I really appreciate it. You're very purposeful in the way you pursue people. I was excited when I heard you were taking the role that you're in. I'm glad for it, and I know Justice for All and this community is better for it too. So thanks for doing what you do.
I am grateful to be in this position, honestly. So that's the wrap there for episode 10 of Justice for All's Connection with Coffee. I'm Joel DeWit. This is Aaron Baart with some titles. He's doing some great things here on Dordt University. He, through the Spirit, in conjunction. I'm not going to lose that. Hopefully they watched all of it so far or listened to it, but I appreciate that work. So thanks very much for listening, and God bless.